Hey guys, good evening. Welcome to Tall Tales with Taco. My name is Mitch Bell. I'm a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel, and my call sign is Taco. It's a pleasure having you with us tonight. And continuing with my October history themed month, we are back in the Pacific. I've got Captain Haldane behind me here. Scott Gibson tried to model, but I couldn't get him down from Canada. So I had to get this other handsome fella to stand in and guard my office when things are shut down. But the whole reason we're here is because of this book right here. And if you haven't read this book, With the Old Breed at Peleliu and Okinawa by EB Sledge, then you are missing out on probably the most descriptive bird's eye view from a snuffy in terms of what a private is going through. It's not glorious by any means. War is never glorious, but to be able to capture it the way that he did so many years after the action has created the catalyst for such shows that we've enjoyed, like the Pacific, where they were able to take Sledgehammer's thoughts and actually put those on the television show. And I'm telling you right now that it's how do I even say this as a Marine? This is one of the most important pieces of history documentation that has ever been written. And in 1988, when I was commissioned as second lieutenant, my neighbor, my mentor, a gentleman named James A. Mishner, who was a retired Marine lieutenant colonel, gave me this book. And he said, Mitch, this book is the best, bar none, book that's ever been written about war, that tells you what life is going to be like and what the men are going through. And there was many things, examples that he gave in the book about Captain Haldane, and you want to strive to be like this officer whose presence was just revered as it came through and exuded through Sledgehammer's writings of Captain Haldane. There's so many things in this book that just are important to me and many other Marines out there. So tonight, I am so blessed not only to have Scott Gibson, who's my co-host for these Pacific-themed podcasts, but Henry Sledge, the son of EB Sledge. So without further ado, I'd like to bring Henry on. And Scott, hey, gentlemen, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
Very well.
Doing out.
We clash tonight.
Hey, it's a little Marine red, right? It's not Marine Friday, but it is Marine red.
That's it.
Henry, where's your Marine shirt? Gosh, man, we're gonna have to beat you.
I do not have a Marine shirt. I have a We Happy Few 506 podcast shirt, but
you got some red. You got some red in the background. I see.
Yeah, that's a Japanese flag there, but
yeah.
Is it signed? Is it signed by your dad?
It is not. The story. I actually never even saw that flag until he had sent all of his artifacts down to Auburn University to the archives.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1999, I went to Peleliu to retrace his footsteps, and then I came back, and it wasn't long after that he boxed everything up and sent it to them. And he came to me and he said, listen, I got a bunch of stuff I'm sending to Auburn. Do you want it? And at that point in time, young single guy just doing my own thing, I was like, no, Dad, send it down to Auburn if that's what you want to do. Well, when I came back from Peleliu, then I just became smitten with the whole, I was always passionate about my dad's legacy, but it got really serious after I got back from Peleliu. And so I went to him and I said, Dad, where's all that stuff? Oh, yeah, you sent it to Auburn. And he said, yeah. So I went down there and started retrieving some things.
Good.
So the things that I sent you pictures of, that, I got them back from Auburn. That flag, as the story always goes, a lot of Japanese soldiers carried folded up flags in the headbands of their helmets. Mm-hmm. That one, that was not the case with that flag. He got that out of a pack of a dead Japanese soldier on Okinawa.
Did he really?
Yes.
So that's why I've got mine here, but it's unfortunately deterioration is it's really deteriorating pretty poorly. So I've got
the Hanamaru right here. You can see, you can't really tell on the camera, but it is fading. So where I have it in this room, there's no sunlight that can get to it. But I had it on the wall in our old house, and I think it started fading years ago, honestly. But
right.
you know,
Well, talking about this with your dad, how old were you? Let's see, in 81, you're about my age. How old were you when he started this?
He started writing it. That was a long process, Mitch. I mean, I can remember when I was a little kid, he would sit up late at night writing on yellow legal pads.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the Bible, he had notes in the Bible. He took those notes and made an outline, and then expounded on the outline as the years went by. But the stack of legal pads just got, bigger and bigger through the years. And sometime in the mid 70s, my mom started typing it, and she really, not to get ahead of myself, but if the world has in many ways shown their gratitude to my father for the legacy that he left in that book, they owe a debt of gratitude to Jeannie Marie Arsenault Sledge, because she's the one who said, you need to try to have this published.
Wow. Do you think that it helped him with his PTS? Actually, bringing this stuff out, did he ever talk about that?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a cathartic process for him. I saw, it was actually on Valor Studios website. They had, Valor Studios, Adam Makos, they were always great about supporting my dad's story. But they had a letter from Sid Phillips that Sid had written sometime in the 80s, I think. I'd have to go back and look at it, but I had never seen this letter. But it was where he was describing, not long after With the Old Breed had been published, it was starting to gain traction. It had been out a few years. And he was describing going to 1st Marine Division reunions. And he said, Sledgehammer would come up to my room and just want to hide, because he was getting to be a celebrity. I mean, I'm a self-effacing guy. My dad was a self-effacing guy. It feels weird saying that, but he was getting to be a celebrity. And Sid says in this letter, all the other Marines wanted to meet him. They wanted to talk to him. They wanted to introduce their wives to him. And Eugene just didn't seek out that kind of attention. He didn't want it. That wasn't why he did it, but I think he felt driven to do it. I think he felt driven to tell the story of his buddies in K-35, and on a broader level, the entire 1st Marine Division.
But to be encompassed in here, and this is his actual Bible here.
That is the Bible.
And you can see inside the notes written. So during downtimes, I think in one of the episodes, Snafu's like, "What you writing, Sledge?"
Ain't supposed to write deep down, Sledgehammer. Gives Japs valuable intel, they find it.
Yeah, God, they did such a great job casting him, because wait a minute, I've got the picture of the two of them together, and they look exactly like that.
Now
looks just like Rami, right?
Hold on, let me, not to correct you here, Mitch. That is George Surratt on the right.
Oh, it is? I thought that was Snafu.
That is a guy named George Surratt. Now, there is a picture of my dad and Snafu, and I think it's on Pavuvu. That's going up in the horseshoe. Okay, that's on Okinawa.
Right there.
Yep, the Snafu is right there with him, lower center part of the photograph. That's on Ingusibus.
Yeah, it's hard to see Snafu, but when I saw that photograph, I thought, oh my God, that's, if they had a casting, they're like, oh man, we'll put Rami in there. Looks just like the dude,
Rami was great in that role.
Yeah, he really was. Well, he's great in all his roles. Except for James Bond. I just saw that. I wasn't impressed, but that was, sorry. But your dad.
No, I was just going to say, because, Rami had very little to go on in terms of who Snafu was. So there's, as hard as that can be, there's also a great amount of liberty as an actor to just go there. And he most certainly did, right? Like, I mean, he was, it wasn't, you know, like that type of character, the lines they had for him. I mean, he just dove right into it. And, you know, I remember you know, I don't think he was able to get a hold of anyone in Snafu's family, and certainly didn't, you know, he's a much better looking guy or kid than Snafu. No offense, Snafu, but, you know, like for those reasons. So he just, yeah, I mean, he went out there for it.
Well, his accent's great. Did he go down and hang out? Did he ever talk about that? Did he go to New Orleans and hang out down there?
Rami, no.
Get a little Cajun feel for it?
No, he's very much a guy who, like, his, I think, process is just internal, you know, like he wasn't out and about with the guys, you know, night after night or anything like that. He very, very confident actor, very confident in what he was doing and what he was bringing. And, you know, he just sort of immersed himself in that, not in a kind of method way, like he was like that all the time, but
right.
You know, that's why I think he was able to take those stretches with playing him, because he, you know, there wasn't anything to go on.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, it's just like you didn't have any old video of his mannerisms, Haldane's mannerisms, or how he spoke or anything like that, except for his writing. But to hear somebody's inflection in their voice.
I was wondering, you know, Henry, what do you think your father would have thought of the Pacific in terms of him being front and center the whole time within that story, like how he would have?
Great. That's a good question. I've thought about that a lot, and I have to be honest. I think this is going to sound weird, but it's probably better that the Pacific came out after he had passed.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think he would have really been on board with all the attention, because, like I said, you have to understand the kind of man he was. He did not write with the old breed to tell a really cool story and get his name out there and get fame. You know, that was not, he didn't like war movies. When my brother and I were kids, he didn't have any interest in watching them. He just walked through the room and go, I've seen that crap before, you know?
Yeah.
But I think he would have been gratified that the Marine Corps, K-35, that those guys were getting their just due. I know he felt real seriously about how Peleliu was a forgotten battle, which I would argue now that, thanks to my dad's book and other books in the Pacific, I would argue that Peleliu is not a forgotten battle anymore. But not to go down that road. You know, he would be glad that because so many good Marines, I mean, it grieved him to the end of his life. How many Marines, and there were soldiers that died there too. Let's not forget them.
Sure.
That island was taken at terrific cost. And the fact that there was this perception that they didn't need to go there. There are people who argue now that that's not the case. But those things really, you know, he couldn't just absorb something like that and then push it aside and get on with his life and never think about it again.
Did your father ever have, and I'm not saying it's professional jealousy, but between the different battles, like there was RV Bergen. We used to have to separate RV and this other guy who was on Iwo Jima. He would show up in his red Marine Corps League jacket, had an Iwo Jima survivor hat, and of course all the Marines run to this guy.
Sure.
And they want to talk to him about Iwo Jima, and it would piss RV off to no end. And he's like, that little fella spent one night on goddamn island, and I spent 3 years slugging it out in the Pacific. Nobody even knows Peleliu or Okinawa, you know, they don't even talk about it. And I always felt like you had to do a special job getting those two separated. Did your dad ever look at the other guys, you know, 7th Bond Drive? They always had the Iwo Jima. Did your dad ever have anything like you guys had it easy, or yours wasn't as hard as ours? I mean, was there ever any of that? Even in joking, I'm wondering.
Directed at another U.S. Marine? No.
No.
You cannot appreciate the devotion that man had to the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And to stay on your question, I don't, if he ever felt that way about other Marines and other battles, he never expressed it to me. So, and he and I talked quite a bit about all this stuff. I really don't think he felt that way. Now, if you want to talk about, and I don't want to get in trouble with anybody here, but if you want to talk about a soldier who was in Europe, because, you know, my uncle was in 2nd Armored, he was a tanker. You know, my dad felt pretty strongly about the Pacific experience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm sure the difference between Europe and the Pacific, night and day sometimes.
But, you know, I mean,
treatment, even if you got captured.
Right. I know that because, again, in the scope of it all, I was always really, in addition to his Pacific experience, well, all of it, World War II, you know, I was really interested in the Eastern Front, you know, when Germany invaded Russia. And, you know, if I found a documentary or something that went into that, you know, he'd stop and watch for a minute. He said, man, those guys, they had it rough on the Eastern Front. And we got to talking one night about it. And there was a book called The Forgotten Soldier by Guy Sayer.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually seen my dad's book compared to that book. It was written back probably in the 60s or maybe 70s, but it was a German infantryman who fought all the way through the Eastern Front, and a very powerful book. And my dad had read it and then gave it to me and told me to read it because he knew how interested I was in the Eastern Front. And I do remember him saying, again, not to exclude anybody, but he said, man, that other than our guys who were captured and held prisoner of war by the Japanese, he said, those guys on the Eastern Front, they went through something nobody can imagine.
I bet. And how about the portrayal of your father on the screen as a young dad that you knew? You know, we all get older and slower and stuff, but do you think the portrayal of your father on the big screen, was that done pretty accurately?
I do. I think it was done pretty accurately, you know, and I think Joe Mazzello did a fine job. I think he took the character very seriously and tried to understand the essence of the character, the you know, the true sense of the kind of guy that he was portraying. You know, you can't watch a 10-part miniseries that focuses heavily, not solely, but heavily on your father.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that and come away from it and just go, well, they checked every box. It was perfect. I wouldn't change a thing. You know, there are going to be things that you might wish they'd done a little differently, but I think they did a fine job. I really do.
And did he come out and hang out with you and your family to get a little background and stuff like that?
We talked on the phone, and I'll tell you when it was. It was the HBO greenlit the project. I want to say, Scott, you may know this for sure. I want to say it was around 2008.
Oh, it would have been early 2007.
Okay.
Yeah, we started in 2007.
Okay. Well, you know, then so back it up to 07. It was around the time that HBO greenlit it, and Joe called us, and we all had a long conversation. But, you know, as far as like coming to visit us and spending extended time, there was nothing like that.
Well, I was wondering because for your character, Scott, HBO gave you a file this thick of different things. So the amount of research that they must have done, that's incredible. I'm wondering, I mean, they did the same thing for you guys, looking for old letters, photographs, different things.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been great to have, you know, to have imparted some of our context to Joe, but he never came and visited us. But, you know, I don't feel that slighted his process at all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, had my dad still been alive, obviously I'm sure he would have made every effort to to sit down and have some one-on-one person-to-person contact. But
right. Well, reading the book is such a descriptive text in itself that you could pick up the
right.
nuances of your father's writing and speech and things like that.
And I think he was a perceptive guy. So, like you said, he had the best roadmap he could have right there with his book.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
Incredible.
I think Joe picked up, a lot of good things from that.
Well, I got some pictures. I was going to ask you about this. Can you tell us about this picture of your dad here?
Yeah, he is in China. He's in Peking is what he always called it. Beijing as we know it now. I'm not sure what structure he's standing in front of, but that is in China when they were on occupation duty. He's got his beloved Thompson. He never called it a Tommy gun. He always called it a Thompson.
Well, I got a question about that. In the series, you see him carrying a Thompson, and then you see him carrying the M1, and it was alternating.
The carbine, you mean?
Yeah, not M1. Yeah, the M1 Carbine.
You see him carrying the Thompson on Okinawa. Am I right, Scott? I don't think he carries. He's got his carbine there.
And
yeah,
that's Okinawa.
Yeah, on Peleliu, he had the carbine.
And actually, Taco, to delve into that a little deeper, I actually was looking through some old papers of my dad's and just doing a little research on my own. More to come on that at some point in the future. Stay tuned.
Mm-hmm.
But I came across a snippet of something that he had written where he talked about somewhere early in the Okinawa campaign, he and Snafu got a Thompson, and they rotated out who would carry it.
Okay, I wondered about that because literally, I mean, I told you when I had the sinus surgery, and I watched the Pacific, then I watched Band of Brothers, and all of a sudden I looked at it and I realized, all right, I've got two M1 Garands, but I don't have any Thompson or any carbines. So now I've got two carbines. But I always noticed he was switching out. It was like all of a sudden he was in the lead. He had the Thompson, and then he was shooting and he had the carbine. So I always wondered if they kind of swapped out.
So there's a scene in the Okinawa part where they make him go up on a ridge and call in fire on the hut.
Right.
And they see what is supposed to be a bonsai charge starting. And you see him look around and he picks up a carbine. At first, he's like, shit. He throws it. He doesn't throw it. He puts it down, grabs an M1 Garand because he knows that at a longer range, that Garand would have been, the M1 would have been more accurate. But if I remember correctly, through the Okinawa episode, I think he's always got that Thompson. But in that material I just was sifting through earlier, actually, it was not long before we came on here, and I just happened to come across this scrap of paper he had written. Snafu and I acquired a Thompson, and he and I would rotate out carrying it.
Interesting. Okay.
But he did talk about how the M1 carbine didn't have the stopping power that they liked, and the 45 was so much better. But he'd see something on a TV show where a guy's shooting a Thompson, and he's just wearing it out, holding the trigger down. And my dad was like, I never fired more than a 3-round burst.
Right. Well, the guys in Korea, when they were fighting the Chinese, they were the packing on their winter uniforms was such that if you had an M1 Garand, you could shoot center mass. If you had the carbine, you had to do the headshot because you wouldn't get through the clothing. And that 30-30 is not going to get, 150 yards, 200 yards, still going to hit and good punching power. I'm not sure.
He always told me, because, I have the 45 that he carried. I think I sent you a picture of it. And I remember him telling me, he said, man, the 45, yep, that's it. He said, we loved that thing. I mean, the stopping power, he said, it was just, you really felt secure with that. And he said the M1 carbine, he told me a story, and I think it was on Peleliu. He saw a guy pretty much unload on a Japanese soldier and empty a full clip into him, and the guy didn't even stop coming.
That's a question I wanted to ask you. Is this your grandfather's?
Yes,
45 from World War I?
yeah, that is a Springfield Army 45, Springfield Armory 45. And as you know, Springfield made a certain number of them, and that's what that one is. I've shown that at gun shows and had people just about start drooling when they see it and ask me what I would take for it. And, I'm like, buddy, this thing isn't for sale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he bring that with him, or was?
Yeah. So the deal is, yeah, great quote. I'm glad you asked that, Scott. So first of all, I remember my dad saying, I was an enlisted man. Enlisted guys were not issued 45s. Officers were issued 45s. But my grandfather, that was his pistol. He sent it to my father. He went down to Mobile County Sheriff's Department, got a document, which is at Auburn. I do not have it, requesting permission to send this overseas to his son who was fighting the Japanese in the Marine Corps. And he sent it to my dad. Scott, we talked about this on We Happy Few, the scene where my dad's on Pavuvu and he gets the package from home. It's a 45, it's a 1917 45 revolver. Right. I had some really, I had some spirited conversations with Bruce McKenna. I'm like, Bruce, what the hell did you just do? I've sent you guys pictures of this pistol. You knew it was automatic. And so, that was, we went back and forth on that. That was not Bruce's decision, but,
right.
He sent it to my dad overseas, and my dad carried it from there on out. When he came home, I remember him telling me, because he said, we couldn't, we had to turn stuff like that in. We couldn't just bring our weapons home with us. And he was coming down the gangplank. They had a lieutenant there checking things off, and he held it up and he said, "Sir, this is my personal property. I've got a paper that authorizes that." And he said, "The lieutenant, just go ahead."
See, how the heck he was able to carry that paper all the way through the war is what amazed me. I mean,
well, it might have been like in the lower, so like the Marines have the combat pack, and then below that there's a cargo pack that attaches to it, and they usually left that in a rear area. It was probably in that, Mitch. I mean, that's a good question. That's the kind of detail oriented stuff that I like to get into. I'm guessing he didn't have that on his person.
Yeah,
I will show you if I can lay my hands on it.
Cool. Now
this is the first letter that my dad wrote to my grandmother after he came off Peleliu. He was still on Peleliu, but he had come off the front lines.
Oh, wow.
And he says in here where he carried this paper in his pack for 32 days, waiting on the chance to write her.
Yeah.
But the document you're talking about, yeah, I'm guessing that was in a rear area, probably in his cargo pack.
Yeah, because I mean, you figure the rain on the islands and the mud and all the stuff going on. How do you keep that one piece that allows you to bring this thing home?
Yeah, I mean, he mentions in this letter, he talks about, I hadn't had a bath or a shower or a bath in 32 days.
Yeah.
So this is the first chance I've had to write you and tell you I'm okay.
You're the 45 I carried just before my first moments on screen, running into that tank trap where the mortar guys were, Hillbilly just leaves, and I had the rubber 45.
Really?
Nobody else, not webbing, costumes, weapons, nobody exchanged it. And out of the blue, Freddie Joe walks up, and he's got the real one, which has a certain weight to it that a rubber one doesn't have.
Sure.
And he just grabs the rubber one, he pulls it out of my shoulder holster, sticks the real one in there, and he goes, "I'll make you famous." And he walked away. But his attention to detail, that, I mean, we go on about that, but having the real McCoys there, training us, and their attention to detail for everything we wore and the weapons, and Freddie talked about the Suicide Charlie guys on there, and Guadalcanal, like, just and because otherwise I would have had to carry that. Now, how many people are going to know? But I sure as hell knew, because it felt way different, and having that, it's like, okay, and then you got to, how to, you want to use it and adjust it and everything. The rubber ones, you just totally, you forget about. Thanks, Freddie. James
A. Missioner came home from Iwo Jima with that.
Wow.
Wrapped up in that uniform behind me. And it's look the serial number up. It's Colt but it's a 1941 version.
Okay.
But incredible what that thing's been through. But yeah, you're right. It's got some weight to it, and if you're wearing the shoulder rig, that makes a little bit of a difference.
I never fired it at all, the whole series, and at the very end, this guy from Weapons, young kid, you know, and he I think Australian guy, knew about Haldane, loved the series, loved what I did in it, and so we got back to the enclosed kind of firing range there, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to fire the 45?" And I'm going, "Well, you really want me to, so yeah, why not? You know, let's go, let's do it and fire it." He just, I don't know, he just got such a kick out of me, like, you know, just firing off a few shots. I mean, it doesn't feel the same, obviously, with a blank, but it's still pretty cool.
Oh, it's still, hey, best part is you didn't have to clean it, did you?
No.
Because that's a son of a bitch to put back together, man. 45 is a pain in the butt. You lose that spring.
Just give it to the armor. There you go.
Yeah. There's Freddie Joe. He's watching. I'll make you famous. Yeah. Brent Jones, HBO changed that to a revolver in the series. I remember asking Dale Dye why they changed it, and he said,
"Yeah,
right, so that was a fight above my pay grade."
Yeah, I just about, man, the first conversation I had with Bruce McKenna, I feel bad for what I said to him, but you know, he said, "Henry, that probably came from Dale Dye," and I said, I sent you pictures of it. Jesus Christ, could you? I mean, what the hell, man? What was the logic behind that? You know?
Well, because it was a 45, right? It was a 45, and it was distinct. Because the rest of the weapons, everybody has a 45. That actually would have made it more distinct to the average person than like a Marine going, "Oh, only officers would have a 45. Why is that guy carrying a 45?"
Right. They did it. Yeah, there was like design decisions, right? Because when I showed up and before I got on set, and I had, you know, my helmet's, I look at it and it's got the Eagle Globe and Anchor on it, and I you know, went to the skipper like, "Hey, skipper, what the fuck?" I mean, I talk about a bullseye, and he never would have had that on his helmet anyway. And the skipper's like, "Wow, I think it looks good," you know. But he goes, it's a designer's decision. So if you can talk to them about it. But Haldane had a sidearm, not a shoulder holster.
Right.
And that to me made a big difference because this thing's flying around all the time, and I like, practically, even just as an actor, I wanted to change it, but you know, they wouldn't allow it, and I was the only one with that Eagle Globe and Anchor on my helmet. It's like, well, to distinguish you from the other guys, and I'm going, fuck, if people can't figure out who Andy Haldane is, they shouldn't even be allowed to watch the show.
Yeah, I mean, you're just asking for a sniper to take you out.
Yeah.
There's your dad's hat right there.
Yeah, that's his HPT cap.
And is that the EGA Eagle Globe and I mean, is that the one that he had on his collar he kept through the war for good
That's
luck?
a good, actually, Mitch, I think, I mean, that it's in the closet. I could go pull it down and look at it, but I don't want to do that right now with being in the middle of the show. But I don't think that's the actual EGA that was on it at the time.
Yeah.
I think that EGA, I could be wrong about this. I know on, you know, he always wore a leather belt, and I know that because he had to pull it out a few times when I was a little kid, but he had an EGA on it. And all his life, the belt that his everyday belt had an EGA on it.
What were they made? They're metal?
EGAs, yeah, it was, I want to say brass. Was that right, Mitch? Would they have been brass?
All ours were plastic.
Yeah. No, they were metal.
Yeah, they're metal. The World War II ones, I mean, they're real flexible. You got to be real careful with them. They'll break apart. But
we had, yeah, that's his. That's right up here on the wall. His HPT, his P41, I guess, is the equipment folks call it.
Looks pretty clean.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a clean uniform right there. No blood stains. Yeah. You know, I love this picture right here.
Yeah, that was right after he came home in 1946.
Do you guys still have his dress blues, or is that down in?
The dress blues, I had them for a while. I think in 2010 I took them back to Auburn. But my hope is one day we're going to add on to that. We'll probably build a 2-story garage to, get a little additional parking. But my half of that's going to be upstairs, and I'm going to put all my all my dad's World War II stuff. So I probably, and we've been in touch with the archivist at Auburn this week to discuss some things. And if that day ever comes, I'm going to go down there and say, guys, can I retrieve some of these things? But yeah, his dress blues, I mean, they hung in the closet when I was growing up.
Does he still have the ruptured duck on the right shoulder? Does he have that little ruptured duck on there?
Not on the dress blues, but there is a patch with the ruptured duck on it. Because I remember asked him what that was, and he said we were supposed to wear that to show that we've been mustered out.
Yeah, you're honorably discharged. Yeah, make sure you weren't a AWOL guy. Right. And there's your uncle right there.
Yeah, that is my uncle, Edward S. Sledge, Ed Sledge.
Is that the Silver Star?
Do what?
Silver Star?
Bronze Star, Silver Star, 3 Purple Hearts.
Wow.
He got he was a tanker, 741st Tank Battalion, landed D-Day. I think he got, and I did say 3 Purple Hearts. I'm not sure. My cousin sent me a photograph, with a phone picture of his bravery citations, but the Purple Hearts, I'd have to go back to her for that information. But he was wounded 3 times, but I know he got the Bronze Star was, well, let me go back. He got the Silver Star either on D-Day or the day after. There was a guy who was under fire. Nobody could get to him. My uncle jumped out of his tank, pulled the guy to safety, and kind of part of that same incident led his tanks through a minefield on foot.
Wow.
So, and then he got his Bronze Star early 45. No, it was right during the Battle of the Bulge. And really? That was near Wallerscheid. And it makes my hair stand on end to read the citation of his Bronze Star, because he got out of his tank. They lost radio communication. They were supposed to hook up with 2nd Infantry Division on the other side of a village. It was snowing, heavy enemy fire. And he, again, led his outfit on foot through fire-swept roads, snow-swept roads, and linked up with 2nd Infantry and established communication with the CO and told him what was going on.
That's amazing. And he was part of Patton's group, wasn't he? Was that 8th Armor?
He was 2nd Armored, 741st Tank Battalion. 741st was an independent unit, I think. Yeah, but I think the patch there is hell on wheels. I think he was 2nd Armored. But I didn't know my Uncle Edward nearly as well as I wish I could have, because, as a World War II enthusiast, the questions I would have liked to have asked him, right. And I mean, like granular detail stuff, like, tell me about being in a Sherman and taking on a Panzer IV, what, but he was not the loquacious man that my father was on talking about this kind of stuff. But some of my early childhood memories are my brother and me being in our grandmother's house in Mobile, and my brother was 7 years older than me, so I would have been like 5 and he'd be 12. Of course, this was around that time when Patton, Longest Day, all those movies came out. And he said, "Hey, let's go look at Uncle Edward's medals. They're in the drawer over here." And so we'd pull them out, and open all the cases and have to see the Purple Heart and the Silver Star and the Bronze Star. And he was like, "Oh, he was in Battle of the Bulge," and I just, even at age 5, 6, 7, I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, that was amazing to be able to look at all that stuff.
But that's Sledgehammer's brother. So,
yeah, I got. Make sure you put a sprinkler system in to protect your treasures when you build your garage.
That is a good point.
That is a good point. And Brandon has a really good point here. Originally, World War II EGA referred to as bronze material, but later brass. But in 43, in order to save on brass for shells, started making EGAs out of plastic. I didn't know that.
Wow.
Bakelite material. Hey, Brandon, thanks for that. And
that's interesting.
And Brent Jones, this can be conveyed to Scott Gibson at some point. Delivers the single best line in the Pacific. "Don't look at me, Lieutenant. The Gutty's right." That was a great line. Yeah.
I enjoyed that one.
That was a great line.
I remember. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm having a flashback of Gary Sweet flipping out there.
Take that, you beeping chap,
yeah.
and recover.
He jumped on the tail end of the conversation we had after we finished the live part of the last We Happy Few 506.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a few of us still on there. Gary Sweet is 64.
Okay.
Okay. So he'd have been what?
54, 53?
Early 50s doing that. Did boot camp and everything. Man, that guy was fit. And he just got on there for a few minutes and he's like, oh, geez, I got to go. My 4-year-old's going crazy. He's got a 4-year-old. Married again. He's the most virile man.
Yeah, it keeps him young. That's why.
Oh, a 4-year-old and I think a 10-year-old there. But yeah, shame he didn't get a little bit more screen time with what he was doing because he was awesome.
I thought he did, and this is, I remember being a small kid. And again, my dad was very, we talked about this stuff a lot. And I had an interest in it from an early age. And I remember him talking about Haney.
And did you ever get to meet him at any of the K-35 reunions?
No, I never went to any reunions. I did meet Snafu in 1984.
Oh, really?
I did. Yeah. I came home from college for the weekend. I remember it really well. I walked in the front door and this Snafu and his wife were in the living room. And of course I knew who he was. I'd read the book. I mean, the book had been out a few years at that point and I'd read it twice at least. And I walk in and, Snafu was this short, stocky guy. And the picture they have of him in his service uniform, he looked a lot like that, only obviously older. Mm-hmm. And, I walk in and Dad was like, Snafu, this is my son, Henry. And, how you doing? It's good to meet you. Your daddy and I were good friends, and I was like, yes, sir. It's a pleasure to meet you.
And what did he do after he got home? I mean,
I saw something on the internet that I thought said he went into the heating and air business, but then I saw something else that said he was in the lumber business. Actually, Scott, it was the crawl at the end of part 10. It said he went into the lumber business, didn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
So to answer your question,
how accurate is that when in the Band of Brothers, they said, what's his name died?
Blythe.
Yeah, Blythe died. It turned out, no, he was alive and well.
Yeah, I think that tidbit goes back to one particular person doing some research, but I won't mention any names. But yeah, Snafu. I'm not sure. And my parents went over to Hammond, Louisiana, to visit him and his wife.
Right.
Of course, my dad was his pallbearer in 1993. But that was cool.
I wonder if Haney would have even been alive around the time those reunions happened.
That's a good question because he was already, so much older.
And he was only on Peleliu for one day.
Yeah. It may have been
after that first day, he was done. He was like, I'm done. This is fucking crazy.
And of course, I mean, the guy he was the old breed. So, I mean, if he said, guys, I'm done, 115 degrees in the shade, I'm out. And they were probably like, Haney, you've done your job, man. You can go home.
Yeah, World War I all the way through to that.
But I don't think in the book, my dad, I don't think he was so close to Haney that on such and such a day, Haney left us and we knew I don't think there was any information like that and with the old breed.
I know you probably get this a lot, but how did your dad come to that title with the old breed?
He was, I remember when I was a kid asking him like, Dad, this book's coming along, isn't it? Yeah, I'm working on it, And of course we could see it coming along because the stack of legal pads were just, getting to be huge, and my mom was constantly typing. But I remember I said, well, what are you going to name it? What's going to be the title, And he said, well, I was thinking about Marine Mortarman, that was one thing I thought about, and that he kind of got rid of that idea pretty quick. And then I remember him saying his working title that he thought about naming it was Into the Abyss.
Oh, that's good.
But Into the Abyss, but that never happened. He started corresponding with Robert Sherrod, who was a correspondent Robert Sherrod wrote what I think is a fantastic book, History of History of Marine Aviation in World War II. You know, Sherrod was a prolific writer. He was a correspondent, was with the Marines, knew them intimately. And I think he's the one who put up the idea of something, the old breed. But if you will allow me, I got something here. So every Marine division had its own divisional history. Okay.
Right.
This was written by a guy named McMillan. I think it was George McMillan. Okay. Now, the same guy did not write 2nd Marine Division, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, all of those, but he wrote the 1st Marine Division operational history. Scott's heard me go into this. This is a treasure because every Marine got one at the end of World War II. Okay. This thing, my dad sent his to Sid Phillips. Okay. Sid Phillips wrote his comments in here on Cape Gloucester, Guadalcanal. Here is a page, I'll just show you one with Sid's comments on it of things he saw, Cape Gloucester, Guadalcanal. Right. And then my dad wrote his comments in it for Peleliu and Okinawa. So this kind of stuff's all through this book. And then Sid sent his copy to my dad, and he did the same thing for Peleliu and Okinawa. So they exchanged books and wrote notes in each other's.
That's good, because I mean, your memory and my memory is going to be night and day in terms of, hey, do you remember that time? No, right. You know what? You know, you're wrong, man. He wasn't with us. Yeah, he was. He was. No.
Can I read you a quick paragraph here?
Yeah, please.
This book was written by George McMillan. People who are hardcore Marine history buffs will know that. My dad apparently sent his manuscript to George McMillan. All right. I found this folded up, thanks to my wife, actually, because she found it and put it in the book, found it in some of our papers. George McMillan wrote this to my dad June 21st, 1982. He says, "Dear Gene, you've written a good book. It reeks with the humility of a good infantryman, of one who has seen the worst of battle. It is honest and it is true. That photo of you on the dust jacket is great," capitalized great. "Made me nearly weep with nostalgia. Made me think of all the days I sat like that on my cot at Pavuvu. Something makes me think that the book is going to carve out a place for itself in World War II literature. You haven't heard the last of it. Let me know well in advance of Bantam publication date. Maybe I can hit some kind of lick then. I'm honored you used Old Breed in your title and grateful for the dedication. Now write us another good book, Semper Fi G."
Oh, wow.
So, you know, it's chilling to read that. You know, I think it may carve out in it. You know, that's pretty cool.
You know, I showed you before the show started, but there's the inside of my book. So what happened was James A. Michener did his final battle was Iwo Jima, but I guess your dad was publishing segments of this in the Gazette or Leatherneck.
Yeah, so the Marine Corps Gazette, and I actually would have to, my mother may remember this, but he got a series of articles published in the Marine Corps Gazette about Peleliu, and it was Defense in Depth, Peleliu. Mm-hmm. You know, because Peleliu was such a tactical shift on the part of the Japanese compared to the way they had fought battles prior to that. You know, defense in depth, dig in, fortify yourselves, make the Americans pay for every yard. And that was, Colonel Kunio Nakagawa was a tactical genius. The way they orchestrated and implemented their defensive plans on Peleliu, I mean, the toll it extracted in human blood was just horrible. I mean, the Marines paid a heavy price, and so did the 321st that came in, or the 81st Infantry Division that came in behind them. But, yeah, I mean, that was very, very powerful stuff.
Now, did your dad ever make it back to Okinawa? Did he ever have any desire to go back?
No. Because when I went to Peleliu in 1999, a flyer came in the mail from Military Historical Tours, I think is who was putting on the trip. And my dad knew that I was really interested. I'd always wanted to go to Peleliu because I was just captivated by this thought of a sparsely populated, far-flung island that still had all kinds of, World War II stuff on it. I was fascinated by that, and ever since I was a teenager, I'd wanted to go there. And in 1999, I was, I was able to do it financially. But that flyer came in the mail, and he said they're taking a 55th anniversary trip to Peleliu. Maybe you ought to think about going if you want. And I said, well, yeah, I'd love to. Well, I got the flyer, called the people, started talking to them, and they said, well, we would be honored for your dad to go. He of course will get an all expense paid trip if he wants to go. And I
Right.
went back and told my dad that, and he just said, yeah, I've already had an all expense paid trip to Peleliu, no thanks. But it was on that trip that I got to be friends with Colonel Joseph Alexander, who's written some really good books, and became a really good friend. And Joe was one of the consultants to the Museum of the Marine Corps when it was in its nascent stages. And Joe, of course, was the one who said, look, you need to make the focus of this museum the enlisted man, because they are the backbone of the Marine Corps. And by the way, read this book, guys, because, he really spoke up on behalf of my dad and said, the focus of your museum should be the enlisted man.
Right.
And I've never been there. I want my family and me to go there so bad, but I've been told there's a little corner kind of dedicated to my dad. So I'd love for my son to see that.
Oh, God, yeah. How old is he now?
He's 13.
13, perfect. That's right. Same age as my boy.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, that'd be perfect. Perfect for him to go out there and visit that. I was in Okinawa for the 50th anniversary. So we had a committee called the Okinawa Plus 50, and all the vets came back. I ended up, my last flight in the Marine Corps in the C-130 was to Iwo Jima for 2 weeks. And we had all the vets come back for that. And then they had the Okinawa guys come back. So I had left in May. I wasn't able to attend all the ceremonies and all the vets that came back. But one of our bosses, General Whistler, he was a major back then. His dad came back, and his dad was Battle of Okinawa. And I remember him talking about, we used to go caving. Did I ever tell you about that? We'd go look for dead Japanese and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
There was this guy, he's like, hey, Skipper, what are you doing tomorrow? I'm like, nothing, sir. And he goes, all right, get your happy ass out there in the parking lot. We're leaving about 4:30 in the morning. I'm like, we're drinking beer at the club. It's like 8 p.m. I'm like, what are we doing? He goes, we're going down south. We're going to go look for dead Japs. And I'm looking for my book. I've got a book on the Battle of Okinawa written up by these Army guys. And essentially, yeah, here it is. So essentially, he had this book, not this book. I ended up buying a copy, but it has all the maps for the battles in here for the island, everywhere on, and it covers Okinawa. So what he would take this thing and would have photographs of whatever, and he would be driving. He would be in the back seat of the van. He'd go, okay, turn left now, turn right, turn left, turn right. Okay, stop here. We're like, all right, sir. He was a major. We're like, all right, sir, what are we doing? He goes, now we're going to go walk through this farmer's field. I want you guys take your little sticks and look out for the habu snakes. I'm like, what are you talking about? Habus, the snakes that bite you. You'd be dead. Don't worry about it. All the farmers got anti-venom. So we walk through and we go up and bust through the canopy, and the big banana spiders would drop through. It was the craziest thing. And then you got up to the hillside, and all the photographs, it was all foliage was all gone from the artillery. But he could still see the outline of the ridge line from the photographs, and he knew that's where the battles were. And so we walk along, and he goes, start digging here. We pull our e-tools out and we'd start digging. I'm like, how do you know that there's a cave? He goes, see the indention. He goes, the Marines would go up. They're not going to go fight in that cave. They put a satchel charge up there with some explosives, blow the crap out of it, kill the Japs in there, trap them in. And I'm like, okay. So we start digging, and sure enough, you dig through a couple feet and you're just pulling the dirt out. It's real loose. And then all of a sudden it busts through. And we had minor lamps, headlamps, and we had a little L-shaped flashlights. And, we go into this thing. Now, you can't be squeamish because there would be centipedes and crap all over the roof of these caves. And you go in and they had the bones were laying in the mud, and skull and bones and skeletons. And so we would identify the caves where we found stuff, but you couldn't really find any belongings because the water seepage had just rusted everything, weapons, everything. You'd find boot soles, the soles of boots, eyeglasses, some sake dishes and rice bowls and little ceramic things we found. But that was, it was an interesting time in my life to say I went looking for dead Japs.
It's interesting you say that. Oh, go ahead. Were you finished?
Oh, well, no, they never, the Japanese don't bother to look for them because the soldiers would grow their fingernails and hair out, cut it all off, send it home to the parents. So if they never came home, they had something of the guy to bury. Wow. And we would go back and we'd mark on a map where these bodies were located and give it to the Japanese liaison down at Camp Foster. And they would go repatriate the remains, but it's almost like they didn't care.
Well, that's one of the artifacts I have of my dad's is a sake cup that he picked up in Shuri Castle.
Oh, he was in Shuri Castle itself. Your dad also had this Japanese bayonet he brought back home.
Yes, that came out of the bunker, which of course they depicted that scene on the miniseries. But yep.
Oh, really? And then that's his K-bar. Yeah, look at that sucker. And see, it's still got the rivets.
I remember I'd go in his study, and for years on his bookshelf, he had that K-bar sitting right there, and I'd pick it up, and he would always say, "See how well balanced it is. There's no knife in the world balanced that well." And I can remember asking him, did you use it a lot? And he said, the main thing we use it for was opening rations and ammo crates and crap like that. But he said, I'll tell you what, I spent many a night with that thing in one hand and the 45 in the other on Peleliu.
Oh God, yeah, I bet.
Garrett told that story about, remember on the last one about Haldane on Gloucester, Waltz Ridge.
Oh, yeah.
When they were trapped up there, and Haldane was just left with his 45 and his K-bar.
K-bar, and that was it. That's all he had.
And it was hand-to-hand combat. The Japanese were like 10 meters away from them.
Well, I tell you, you don't want to get stuck by a K-bar. That's for sure.
No. Remember he said Haldane, because the guy, it was someone beside him on the line that was telling Garrett this story, that he put his K-bar into this Japanese guy, and he flicked him off the knife like he was throwing a football.
Yeah. Well, he was a big guy too.
Tough guy, strong guy.
Tough guy. Yeah. Somebody wrote Haney died in 1979.
79. Wow.
So he passed in 79. Here's another. Ricky, saw your post on Eugene's pack. Absolutely love it. Specific, really told. Story of my great-grandfather endured during his service in the PTO as a Marine. Passed away in 2008 when I was 9. Ricky, hope you're able to, 9's kind of young to document stuff like that, but,
And we were still, then that's when we were filming it, 2008.
Yeah. Wow. I got a Facebook message. It's amazing how many, and thank you, Ricky, for that comment. When I post pictures on that World War II in the Pacific Facebook group, man, it really gets a lot of response, which makes me feel really good. Got a message from a guy who said, I gave a copy of your dad's book to my 10-year-old niece, and she's fascinated with your dad.
Wow.
And I said, well, I appreciate that. That's great. I said, there are parts of that book that are a little heavy for a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
My son's 13. He hadn't read it yet.
Yeah, that would, I don't know if I'd give my 10-year-old niece that book to read. That it's pretty intense. That's why I tell guys, this is not sugar-coated at all.
I've had adults tell me, look, I read that thing. It was amazing, but I was messed up for 2 weeks.
Right. Well,
Would he-
watching the show is dark.
Henry, did your father ever talk about General Rupertus? His feelings towards him, or?
Yeah, Scott, he did.
That's right. Because what happened to Vandegrift? He was in charge Guadalcanal, and then was he mustered out, or he retired?
You know, that's good Lord, man. As many books as I've read on the Marine Corps, I should know that. Yeah, or A.A. Vandegrift.
Wait a minute. I thought he became commandant.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he became commandant.
He went on to become commandant of the Marine
Because
Corps.
Pedro Del Val replaced General Rupertus after Peleliu.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions for Henry Sledge. Bring them up in the comments section right now, and I will ask Henry for you. This will not be the last time I get Henry on the show for sure.
Yeah,
because
I hope not, man.
You're like a professional podcaster now, man. It's just so damn interesting. Every time I listen,
I love doing this because I mean, I've gotten to be buddies with Scott and his crew. You know, it's been fun. I mean, the We Happy Few, I love that deal.
Oh yeah,
Leighton,
Leighton,
you know,
Matt,
I love Leighton.
those guys are awesome. Well, you know what I like to do is help you get the website built.
Yeah,
I will contact my buddy that does websites. You kind of tell us what you want, how you want it set up, and you know, you pay for it, and we'll get a website designed and built for you, I think.
sure. It's something I need to do. My wife's kind of on me because she sees, you know, like I'm going to be on World War II TV with Paul Woodage November 5th.
Mm-hmm.
So Saul David, I want to put in a plug for him. Have you heard of the British author Saul David?
No.
He's a historian. He wrote a book called Crucible of Hell about Okinawa. He's British, great writer. He's written a manuscript about K-35.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked Richard Frank to read it. Rich did read it, liked it. Rich and I were talking a few weeks ago, and he said, would you be interested? And I'm sure Saul would love for you to read this if you'd be amenable to doing that. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So Saul David sent me a nice email and said, you know, I would really appreciate it if you would read it and give me your thoughts. So yeah, forthcoming book. It's going to be called Devil Dogs by Saul David. It's going to be specifically about K-35.
Oh, very cool.
So, you know, all our guys will have a front and center. They'll be front and center for the whole book. So
well, tell them to get up with Garrett, because Garrett, that sharp young lieutenant, has got the handle on Haldane. So if they want to expand any amount on ACAC.
I'm 83 pages into it, and actually ACAC just got into the story.
Wow. Yeah. I think he's got probably heads and shoulders above a lot of people in terms of the knowledge on that individual. Yeah.
He said that book could be like 300 pages, over 300 pages.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got Roy Davis is one of our local historians here in Fort Worth, and New R.V. Bergen told me one time that the Pacific portrayed the Battle of Peleliu very well. Yeah, you guys, what was that like for you, Scott, jumping off the tractors? And how many did they have? One or two? And going into Peleliu?
They had three. There was somebody in Australia bought these things after the Second World War, and they just remained there. So they had three of them, but they didn't spare any money in terms of everything they built. I mean, that airfield and the admin building, and then you know, what was Hill 140, that ridge, what they built there. You stand in that looking at it, and you feel like you're there.
Yeah,
that was an amazing shot. When he sends Sledge and Snafu up there, you're going to scout a position. Mm-hmm. It's when you say, we can't take this without acceptable casualties, I'm going back to battalion. But I mean, when it shows the Japanese and you see the muzzle flashes and they start shooting, I'm thinking that's got to be what it really looked like. I mean,
yeah.
And they built all that, like all those rocks that we climb up, that's all fake.
Really?
Yeah, it was flat.
So you guys in a rock quarry somewhere, and designers just build this stuff?
They just built up. They had like transport cars, I was told, that they'd place, and then wooden frame built over top of that, and then this like high tech, paper mache shit that was really rough to touch and everything like that. Yeah. And then they put real trees and fake trees and caves, and so when you see us run up and we're behind that first rock, and Hillbilly's, I think he told Sledge to go scout it or something. I said, no, I'll do it. Well, that rock wasn't real. And then I moved to the other rock, give him a nod, go out, and they had a crane shot over top of me. So all that they built, and then when I go down, take the binoculars, what I was looking at, I mean, that wasn't CGI or anything. That was there. That was just part of that whole Peleliu set that they built. I mean, it was incredible. It's all the debris, the rocks, the shells, the casings, everything was there. So it was pretty easy to get into it.
Hey, I got somebody else that wants to say hello to you, Scott.
Ah!
Freddie Joe, where are you?
Well, I'm here somewhere. Hold on.
I can't get rid of this guy.
Me and Tech.
Can't get rid of this guy.
You could only be so lucky.
Let me ask you, Freddie Joe, is there anything that you acquired as a souvenir from the show?
Oh, yeah.
Hypothetically, maybe.
Yeah, tons of shit. No, I mean, I got like all the uniforms and stuff. Let me see. Let me walk up here real quick. Let's see. Scott might remember this. Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the rubber 45?
That's his rubber 45. I put it in my bag and never got to see it again.
I'm going to make you famous.
I had the real one.
Yeah, you should have seen me flying home with that. Just that crazy, man. Just that crazy. They'll let you go.
But see, you were the only one who noticed that.
I noticed. That's one of my pet peeves in the films. I notice all that little crazy stuff. Wait, they haven't changed magazines. They haven't changed clips, depending on what weapon. They haven't done this. What we got to do it. And like I told a long time ago, let's just have the inference of it happening, so it leaves our mind. If I see one guy changing a magazine, then I don't have to really think about it all the time. If I see a real 45 next to a rubber 45, I notice it, and especially historical people notice it. All military people know it. When I sell things like this, I always say, there's at least 60 million Americans plus that are associated with, that have someone related to, something to do with the military. If you want to make a good film, make them all happy, and it's just those little things to me is what makes them happy.
Well, and it makes a difference having it on you as well. Like I mean, they didn't, Haldane didn't have a K-bar. I'm going, what? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it just didn't feel right. But I mean, that's all the design decisions that they had, right?
Well, I'd imagine Haldane had to have a K-bar. Every Marine has a K-bar.
No, he did, but in terms of what they gave me, just as a design.
Yeah, he didn't have it in the scene because it looked floppy or whatever.
Oh, I got you.
Opening
up sea rats and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's one of the hard things about having a Canadian actor. You got to like really cheat the scenes to make them look good. So,
shot out, man! Here it goes.
We don't need it. Hey, look, I only had to do 4-day boot camp because I picked it up so quick, right?
No, it's because
I didn't need 9 days.
That's because that one I was mainly doing it, so they knew it was going to be hard enough for you guys.
Yeah. Were you First Lieutenant Thomas Stanley in Band of Brothers? Was that you?
No. You were Stanley in the Pacific. It was a quick scene on Okinawa.
No, I was in actually quite a few scenes. Stuffy Stanley. Yep. I'm the only guy that was in both Band of Brothers and the Pacific. I'm the only person acted in both.
You got it cleared all the way to the north of them Krauts.
That's right.
That's right.
I rode the big white horse.
What's your name, Trooper? Sergeant Farnsworth, sir. I love that scene.
Yeah, and it was a true scene. And the guy wore he looked like a chimney sweep. He wore like a black top hat with a black jacket, like cuckoo out of his head, come running in. And it was true. Everybody said, yeah, it happened. Nobody knew who he was. So that's why they used my name, because they didn't have to get clearance for it. And they wouldn't let me wear the chimney sweep outfit. I was like, hell yeah, put that thing on me. but they're like, no, people won't believe it. So,
I didn't notice that you were stumpy until like the third time or the second time I watched the Pacific.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember Stumpy calling my dad one time. You know, I answered the phone. He says, "You're a Sledgehammer there?" I said, "No, sir." And he said, "Tell him Stumpy Stanley called. Here's my number." So I was like, "Yes, sir."
Yeah. Unfortunately for that, I never got a chance because I literally was casted the night before.
Really?
Basically, that 1 or 2 days before, they were just like, because HBO kept saying, "Nope, he was in Band of Brothers, no actors, nope." And that scene was so loud that Van Patten was like, I can't get an actor that can yell as loud as this guy. And so, like 24 hours before we did it, they went, "Okay, let Freddie Joe do it." So I was just like, "All right, I'll scream louder than 250 cows." And that whole episode, all I did was yell at people, "Get up the damn hill!"
I gotta go back and watch that now. Yeah.
You were nervous. I remember you were writing me for acting tips.
Oh yeah, no.
I was back in Canada and Freddie was calling me late at night. Going, "Geez."
Well, I was drunk.
Yeah, it wasn't acting tips. It wasn't acting tips.
Yeah.
Where'd you buy all that beer that you were always bringing back to the hooch?
Who, me?
No, Scott.
Oh.
Yeah.
Freddie had a pretty sweet pad in Melbourne. I'll give him that, man. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I had the number 5 penthouse in all of Melbourne.
How'd you swing that?
Well, when because I did Band of Brothers, we halfway through we had to like move what they call flats, and so we shut my dog up. And so they said, "Hey, why don't you go out and find a place?" And I go, "Oh, okay." They're like, "Yeah, just you can only up 2,400 pounds is what you're allowed." I go, "Oh, a month," and that was like $4,000 back then. And they go, "Oh no, a week." I went, "Excuse me?"
That's a lot of beer.
It's like you're allowing me like $4,000 a week for a house. I'm like, okay. So it just kind of just kept that in the back of my mind. So when I went to do the Pacific, I got all the guys together and I said, "Hey, look, when we're up in Port Douglas, we really don't have. We're kind of stuck with what we got. I said, but when we go down to Melbourne, if they're putting us up in a terrible hotel or something you don't want to live for 7 months in, we'll just go to the production and we'll get what our weekly toll is and find our own places." And so we did. And since I was kind of on department head, I was getting $2,500 a week for room and board. And then one of my guys, Robert Garcia, Purple Heart Marine that I had over there, he was on $1,800 a week. So we were like, okay, well, and we literally had this, we got this nice penthouse on the Docklands, right on the water. It was beautiful. Big bar, 3 big rooms. It was amazing. And we still like put an extra $5,000 in our pockets a month. So we just kind of outsmarted them on that one.
Yeah. I
had my 40th birthday there. And I remember like David Nutter, Tony Toe, all you guys, all the actors came to my place. And I remember everybody like James Badgedale and everybody going, "How much money are they paying you?"
Yeah.
What the heck?
I'm an actor. I don't have this. Hey,
whatever it is, it's enough.
Let me ask you this, Freddie Joe. How old were you as a Marine when you first read With the Old Breed?
Oh, that was on our NCO reading list. Yeah, I don't know.
Could you read then?
Well, as long as they gave us the crayon version, so it was good.
Lots of pictures.
I was probably, I thought I was 100 years old, but I was probably just 20 something.
I mean, the impression. Did you ever get to serve over? Were you over in Okinawa? I can't remember.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, Camp Hansen. I was at Camp Hansen. When I was in Suicide Charlie, we deployed over there.
Did you ever go down to Naha or any of the areas? Or
yeah, we did it just to drink and get drunk, sometimes, and then we go scuba diving, go out there and then a lot of snorkeling and let all the jellyfish chase us back to the shore.
Yeah, but I mean, did you ever go to any of the battle places and stuff?
No, not really. I was young then. I was 21, 20. It's just like, let's go down there and party. Naha was like, that was the big city for us. Go down there.
Well, yeah, Camp Hansen's not
Yeah, Kenville's is you just had to get out of Kenville after a couple of weeks.
Right.
We did go up. I can't remember. We went up to the cliffs and stuff. We actually went onto Iwo Jima. Our whole company got to go on to Iwo Jima. So I got some nice black sand from there. We deployed down to Indonesia, so we got to stop by Iwo Jima. That was kind of cool. And to be honest with you, the Marine Corps, from day one, the day you step into it, everything's about history and stuff. So on your off days, when you're a young enlisted man at 19, 20, the last thing you want to do is go look at more history stuff. You just want to go and tear the town up. Especially being a grunt, because everybody will tell you, even in training, you leave for the field early, 04, 05, 06 in the morning on Monday, and you come out, 2000 on Friday, and then you clean weapons till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then you get the next day and a half off. You weren't thinking about anything about the Marine Corps for that at least day and a half that you had.
You were down there on Gate 2 Street there by Gate 2 Street or Naha Music Company. Here's Bill Paisley. Sledgehammer lived and taught at University. Yep. Montevideo. My parents were good friends with Sledgehammer. Henry, do you remember Bill Paisley? Paisleys? Does that ring a bell?
Not right off. I'm trying to think back.
He's a Navy F-14 Rio. I've interviewed him on the show. Good friend of mine, and incredible photographer.
Really?
Yeah. So it's kind of neat. I mean, I love the 6 degrees of separation. Yeah. I've got a book that describes the character sitting in front of me that played the man that I was told to emulate. Got the son of the author of the book that every Marine reads, and it's such an honor to have you on here. I got Freddie Joe, fellow Marine, who also participated in the reading of this book to understand, what life was like. I mean, it's going to be like if we could find a person in our generation that could write about the Battle of Fallujah the way that your father wrote about Peleliu and Okinawa, it'd be quite the honor, quite the accomplishment, because those battles house to house were just as fierce as some of the fighting that the guys did in the Pacific. But your dad's experience in the Pacific was beyond belief, especially having been over there when it's 100 degrees out and 100% humidity. It's just miserable. I hate that place. Actually, the scuba diving was really nice.
Yeah.
It was nice in the wintertime when it wasn't raining, or the typhoons, or the mosquitoes, or the large insects.
Yeah, the golden habu, you're right, were pretty nasty snakes.
Yeah, the habu snakes, we used to go see them fight.
Yeah, and the banana spiders were humongous.
Yeah.
But the banana spiders, you'd be out on patrol at nighttime, and I mean, you'd catch them in the face all the time, because they built the trees aren't like oak trees or nothing in America. They're only, you might get some tall ones that are maybe 10, 12 feet tall. They're just thick, so all their webs are like 5, 6 feet across, and they're so thick because they eat birds. So their webs are so thick that birds fly into them and catch them. So when you're out on patrol and you get those in the face, talk about some pretty funny looking Marines running through the jungle screaming.
I scream like a little girl, man, because I'm walking through.
I tell everybody's like, hey, did you run into a lot of snakes in the field? And I'm like, I never really did that much, because all I ever heard was, and I was gone, buddy. You could see I was out of there. SN came out of their mouth, and let's go 1,000 meters that way and 1,000 meters up, and then come back 1,000 meters, and we'll figure out where we're at. And
when you busted through the brush, the canopy, and you get inside, it's all open up. But when you're busting through, all of a sudden you hear this stuff going plop, plop. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And I look, big ass giant banana spider lands on you, drops out of the tree, lands on you, and the hair's going up on my neck thinking about it right now. And you feel like Indiana Jones, with all the tarantulas.
Yeah, I rappelled in the NTA with the rappel bag on my leg and got a bunch of banana spiders on me coming through the jungle. Dropped a sandbag and then went in after it. It was a nightmare. Horrific. Horrific. I did not, and I'm not a spider or snake guy. That's why I love Wyoming, because a spider doesn't get much bigger than your thumbnail.
Are those ones bigger than the Huntsman ones in Australia?
Yes. Now they're bigger and they're uglier.
Ooh.
They have the thing, like the Huntsman or Huntsman look like a tarantula on steroids.
Yeah.
But a banana spider looks like a daddy long leg on steroids, like or not a daddy long, sorry, like a black widow, but it's like 10, 20 times bigger than a black widow. It's got that big, ugly belly and the long, skinny legs, and it's yellow, if I remember right.
I had one of those Huntsmen in the admin building that scene, and it was crawling down my pants into my gaiter.
Oh man!
And I was like, oh fuck! In this Australian, I don't know, he's grip or something, and he comes up to me and says, "Oh mate, you got a fucking Huntsman going down into your gaiter." And I'm like, what? And he starts slapping my pants. And he's going, "Don't fucking worry, they don't hurt you." But he's slapping and he doesn't get the thing. He's just sort of pushing it closer down into my gaiters. And I'm like, get that fucking thing off me, man.
Yeah, it's only number 8 on the deadly list.
Yeah, fuck.
Even the trees kill you in Australia. It's horrible.
Yeah, big tough Haldane. He's freaking out with the Huntsman.
You know what? You were talking about like the old breed, reading the book and stuff, and that's one of the things you have to do as a tech advisor. Everybody asks me, asks for stuff. Hey, you tech advise, you train these guys, and you. One of the worst things you can do is just read the old breed.
Oh, I lost Freddie.
You cut him off already.
I did. Hey, I just got a message from one of my Marines. And he got some, there is a Tall Tales with Taco scam site. You know how these scammers, they do the Bitcoins and all that stuff. Listen, folks, if you see something from Tall Tales with Taco, it's not from me. I'm sitting here on the show. I'm not sending you invites to look at Bitcoin. So don't click on any of those links. That ain't me. Anyway.
Freddie was having trouble with his internet there, I think.
Yeah, Spider got him.
I wanted to hear what he was saying about reading the book and being the military advisor.
Yeah, we'll see if he comes back up. Until then, Henry, I can't wait to have you on again. This is just, like I said, a real honor.
Yeah, it's been fun, man.
I might have to find a first edition to get a better. This thing has been 40 years or 35 years with me.
Wow.
And the cover's a little taped up and worn out, but
yeah, I've still got the first edition that I was 17, and I remember I can still see him sitting there writing his inscription to me in it for when I was 17. So it had been out, a year or so at that point.
Well, here's bring back memories.
Yeah.
December 13th of 1982 to Lieutenant Colonel James A. Mishner. Best wishes and deepest respect, fellow Marine. Yeah, your dad was something else.
That's cool. So did you meet him, Mitch?
What's that? Your dad? No, I never met your father.
Okay.
No, that's James A. Mishner was a neighbor of mine up there in Arlington, Virginia.
Gotcha. So Mishner gave you his stuff.
Yes. Yeah, I got all of his stuff. I showed you earlier. I've got I've got the little tiny Bible, Marine Bible, and K-bar, 45, uniform, sword. And I'm very fortunate. I have a lot of neat memorabilia from Colonel Mishner.
That's cool.
That he gave you that uniform?
Yeah, that uniform was, if I flip it around on the back, it still has J.A. Mishner on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it looks brand new. I mean, it's my guy that sponsors me, Brad Williams. He's just a buddy, and I like to advertise a small business and especially love his business. I bought that helmet. It's a World War II helmet from him the other day when I was putting this together, and the suspenders. When I told him what I had, and he goes, "Do you know how much that uniform is worth?" I'm like, "No clue. Not that anybody would ever get it from me." He goes, "Thousands and thousands of dollars." And when I told him,
when's it from? What year?
Iwo Jima, 45.
Yeah.
So when they came back to the ship, they issued new uniforms to all the guys, and he took extra uniform, wrapped up the 45. This 45 on Iwo Jima with the Providence, like I've got the letter from him. giving me the 45. That tied in with Missioner to that battle. Who knows how much that thing would be worth, pay for my kids' college or something, you know? But yeah, you can pry it from my cold, dead fingers.
So that was the extra uniform he was issued after combat on Iwo?
Yeah, after combat, when he got back.
This herringbone twill shirt that I got on my dad's, he had written a little piece of paper when he sent all that stuff to Auburn. He says he wore that at Peleliu and Okinawa, but I have memory of him showing me an HBT that was all sweat stained and bleached out when I was a kid. So I'm not sure. My mom thinks that that was one that came along later. I know it was his. I mean, no doubt about that. It's got the EBS up in the collar.
They probably, you know, they got new issue when they got back to the ship.
But I know he told me he always kept that one he wore at Peleliu, you know, just for good luck.
Hey, Freddie Joe, we thought you the spiders got you.
No, man, sorry, my battery died.
What were you going to talk about with the old breed? As
oh man, my dogs are killing me. Sorry, I got too many animals at this ranch. No, I was talking. You know, when you're doing a film like this, it was the same with Band of Brothers. Is that, you know, if you read 10 books, you're going to get 10 different versions of the same person.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always found it best to go back and study like small parts and pieces from all the different books, all the different historical values. You know, you can read two different encyclopedias and they're both going to have something different unless they're written by the same company. So, and it's very difficult. You know, you're talking about, say, the revolver earlier instead of the 45 semi-automatic, you know, God knows where they got that from, you know, and that's what happens instead. What they'll do is somebody read that one book that said it was a revolver, but there's 50 other books that said, no, it was a semi-automatic 45, regardless. So those are things that you just kind of have to go through. And that's what I do is take all I kind of put all of them together and kind of come up. And that's the good thing about being a Marine, especially in this specific, was I was able to put my experiences and together with my research going, wait, that's bullshit because I've been there and that's not how you feel. So, but that's how I see it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was something I got over. I mean, that was a minor quibble. I really enjoyed the miniseries.
Yeah.
You did what now? I'm sorry.
I said I got over it. I mean, I really enjoyed the miniseries.
Yeah. You know, it's tough. It's really tough. And Scott, I'll tell you this. You know, Scott was lucky he had a really great character, and he was, you know, they didn't really, they didn't push any kind of, oh, this could be taken almost any other way with his character, and I don't mean that in a bad way. But when you started getting into Sledge and Lecky and even Basilon, you know, those characters could have went 10 different directions in the show. So you are definitely not going to make 100% people happy. Sure. But the point is always, and I was talking about this on one of the happy few things that I did, was the greatest thing has ever happened to me is the children of these people came up and say, thank you, you know. And that's the best that you could hope for, you know. Sure. I don't want now if one of them comes up and punches you in the face and you knew you messed it up, but but for them just say, hey, thank you. And a lot of it is not necessarily, hey, you portrayed my dad amazing. They always told me, he's like, hey, I didn't know the side of my dad. And I was able to talk to him because it was there now and he couldn't hold it a secret anymore. And you know, and that really helped our family out and so on and so forth. And that makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, and I guess for me that was the weird thing is my dad and I talked about it so much.
Yeah,
you know, and for example, the bunker scene well, it was supposed to be Ingusivus, but it was actually like you guys did it as if it were East Road, which I totally get because you don't want to film another amphibious landing across the channel. But you know, like the Japanese soldier appeared, and I remember Bruce calling me before they shot that, and he said, "Hey, the director wants to kind of change the way your dad wrote that." And I said, okay, well, tell me what's going on. And so instead of, you know, the armored Amtrak comes up, fires a couple of rounds into it, and then the Japanese appears in the opening of the coral dust is still settling, and he comes up and he's trying to get a grenade off, and my dad just pulls up and starts shooting him, which is what happened. Bruce said, the director wants to do this thing where your dad goes at it with him with a bayonet. What do you think? And I said, well, my dad and I talked about that. He never, because I asked him when I was a kid, did you ever use your bayonet? And he said, no, man, I never let one get close enough to me for that.
Yeah.
But, and we went, and he said, okay, well, we'll take that into consideration. But it was a director thing. The director wanted to do it a little bit differently to have more impact. And then they ended up doing it the way they did it, which, I thought was good.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And only good thing is, about it is, and me and Bruce had arguments about this a lot, was, as long as you don't embarrass this generation, let's go with it. And Bruce, let's face it, Bruce is, he's left of Bernie Sanders. You know what I mean? He's out there. He's a kook. So it was a fight every day with him going, no, Bruce, no. And,
he's part Canadian.
Like, well, and he's an amazing person. And I love arguing. I've said many times, I love arguing with the man because he'll let you argue with him. It's not like you're the devil because you're arguing with me. But he had some ideas too himself. So you're just like, no, Bruce, And I always say it, like, even if it's true, we can make the inference, but we don't have to impact our greatest generation by saying this was something that could or could not have been true. That was one of the bad things about Fury that I'm glad I didn't take it because I was up to take. I'm glad I didn't because it never left that. Well, it was kind of a little bit maybe in Fury it was like these guys did this. They went into towns, they took over the women, they did and it was like.
Did you work on Fury?
Nope. No, I was in the running for it because I had just finished doing a David Ayers film. Mm-hmm. And of course, I've done almost all of Brad Pitt's stuff anyway. I've done quite a few military things for him. And it was like David Ayers went with his guy, and which I was glad in the long run because I would have blew a gasket. I would have been like, no.
So you didn't like Fury?
I mean, there was parts of it I liked and loved. But there was parts of it that I wanted to reach through the screen and grab and just say, you can't do this. You can't, There is one thing that Mitch can tell you. There's some things that don't need to be told because the human mind can't accept it, And when we start messing with our greatest generation and go, oh, yeah, these guys all went into villages and raped all the women and did this and that. Even though it did happen. Yeah. But it didn't happen all the time. It's like to me, it's like saying cops are bad. Well, no, there are some, but the majority of them are there to protect you and to help you and to keep your life going in the direction you want it to keep going. So when you do a film, a lot of times writers get into this, they get into a direction, and that's the direction they want to go. They're going to go that direction. And then a good tech advisor will sit there and start kind of molding him around certain particular things, and going, like I'll put it thing. I did a music video a long time ago. It was called When September Ends by Green Day.
Oh, know the song well.
And when I was doing, they got me to come out and do the video, and it was a very anti-military.
Sure. It's Billy Joe Armstrong, man. It ain't going to be pro-military.
Yeah, right. But when I got there, and I started, I brought in all these guys. Literally came back from Iraq. Sean Bunch, Robert Garcia. Scott knows these names. I used them on the show. They just came back from Iraq. They I had at least 20 guys out there, and I took Green, the actor, and I put him over there. I said, let's train the shit out of him for a day. I played the drill instructor because the guy didn't show up, so I shaved my head real quick. Played the drill instructor in the video. And I go, okay, and they were going back and forth about the first big combat scene. I said, look, you know what? Let me set this thing up. You guys see it. And then you tell me where you want to go from there. And they were like, no, okay. So I had them patrolling down this thing and the whole thing, explosion and people flying and guns, and the director just went, that's what we're friggin' doing. Oh my God. And it became not an anti-military. It wasn't a pro-military thing. It just showed the realism of combat, and it kind of played well into the song. It played better into the song than the, this guy now is forced to be a Marine and he's being shit on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was, and that's kind of how you have, not that I'm great at what I do, I'm just saying, but that's what all good military tech advisors do, is they kind of direct they let the director direct it, but you got to kind of influence the writers and the directors into a way that makes us proud of who we're looking at, you know. Unless we're doing something, if you're doing a film on something that was bad, then you got to do what you got to do. But you know, when you're talking about World War II, you want to keep that going in the right direction, you know. And also, you also want to give all the actors people to base their characters off, you know, because all they've seen is black and white. You know, they've read The Old Breed, they've read all these books, you know, they've read them all. If good actors have done all the research, they get there, but they're still seeing in black and white. And then when you go to boot camp, now they're seeing it in color, and they're going, oh, I want to jump off a cliff for that guy just by the way he talks and the way he moves and what he knows. That's the way I would have based my character off of, because everything I read, that's the kind of guy he was. You know, that guy's a hard ass. That guy can do the same thing by just looking at you and winking, but that guy has to yell and scream at you. My guy's the look at you and wink guy. I want to be more like that. So they start paying attention, and they're now taking everything they've read in black and white, like The Old Breed, and they're starting to see it in color in real life, you know, which is kind of cool.
But because you guys were there, you know, real Marines all the time around.
I made it a point on the Pacific that it was.
Yeah, because you want to get it right as the actor.
Yeah. I'm bringing in combat Marines.
For the Marines, right? Like,
yeah, and Sledge, the guy who trained, you know, Bruce Whitfield, he was actually in the Marine Corps. He was, I got him, you know, we got to his command and got him a special 6 weeks of leave to come over and do the boot camp in the first couple months, or first month of training. So, I mean, it was like, and he was a 22-year mortarman, so he was legit. So that's why those mortar teams look good, and the best mortar teams ever put on film ever.
Yeah,
in the Pacific.
It's disappointing if you're directed to kind of do a hero shot that didn't feel real in terms of how you were trained and how you felt the real person would do it. If it's okay, you know, try, you know, do it this way or that way, and you're kind of going, it sort of it messes with your head, because you know what you want to do.
It's hard too on a show like Pacific and Band of Brothers, because there's so many characters. You know, it's not like you're the lead actor in your show and you can go, no, I'm not doing it that way. You know, you just kind of got to fall in line and let Captain Dye, you know, and Freddie Joe and all these guys try to argue their points for you without you looking like a dumbass or an asshole, you know, which was hard for you as a Canadian to not look like an asshole.
I knew you were going to say it.
But I mean, the truth honestly is, I mean, I did a show where the actors literally sat down and said, nope, because the director was like, well, I want you to do this. And they were like, we ain't filming no more. Because they went through boot camp, they knew all the stuff. They're like, that is bullshit. We are not filming that, you know. But there was a small cast. There was 5 actors, and they were in the scene together. They could sit down. They had all that power, you know. If you sat down, they just go, okay, well, we'll just kind of skip that scene with Haldane, and we'll go to this scene with somebody else. You know, it's kind of tough. It's really tough with that many people.
But I tried to get in the Amtrak, the landing for F5, and you know, I don't think those guys knew enough about Haldane. Really?
No, Haldane.
You know what I mean? Like,
I think Haldane should have his own movie. You know, I mean, there should just be a good 1.5, 2 hour feature film about him. You know, he's one of those characters. Sledge is one of those characters. Barcelona for sure. Of course, me being a Marine, you know.
yeah,
you know, for sure. You know, especially. Barcelona would be good because he cross-decked, what we call cross-decked. He went from the Army to the Marines, you know, and in you know, in today's day, that's a normal thing. You see that a lot. People go in the Army, or even Marines that go into the Army after the Marines to try to go and get their retirement or whatever. But back in those days, that wasn't a real common thing, because the Army was basically in the European theater and the Marines were in the Pacific theater. So it was really difficult to cross-deck from one to another. You know,
I think watching guys like that, like if you're watching guys like Barcelona, Haldane, any sergeant, anybody like that, it'd be like watching an Avenger or something. You know what I mean? Like seeing real guys just like at the front doing what they're doing, be like, holy fuck, like, yeah, I'm gonna follow that guy, right?
Yeah. You know what's sad in this day and age is that look at World War II. How many actors that were our heroes on the big screen actually served in World War II? I mean, Jimmy Stewart.
I listened to a podcast today about Jimmy Stewart. I mean,
Lee Marvin.
Iwo Jima. Ed McMahon. I
Yeah.
mean, Ed McMahon was a Marine. All these
Eddie Albert.
actors.
Guess
Eddie
what?
Albert. God, man, the list goes on. You got all these guys that
Clark
actually
Gable.
served.
You imagine these goofballs nowadays actually doing that?
Well, there's
Some of them think they could.
You don't know one that's trying to get out there.
Yeah, Henry, one of the biggest questions I get towards the end of every show or film or whatever I do when I train guys is, hey, do you think I could have been real? Could I went to boot camp, been a Marine, or could I? And my first response is, fuck no, get out of my face. That's all I would say. Just get out of my face, go fuck yourself. And they're like, oh, well, I was, yeah, you were great in the CBS Army, but in the real shit, it's not like.
That thought never crossed my mind.
There's no spritzing. Well, a lot of actors too. I've had a lot of actors say, "Thank God I didn't go."
Oh,
I thought about it when I was 17, but thank you for letting me know I made the right decision in life. He said, "Holy shit! I can't believe you guys do 3 months of this shit for boot camp and stuff."
That first PT we did at my boot camp nearly killed me. I'm like, holy fuck.
Yeah, we were trying.
And you thought, you
guys
showed up
because me and Bunch who's Anglico, and I'm a bullet sponge, a grunt. So it's like you didn't have because me and him were in our competitive state at that point, and me and him are always arguing. Oh, I'm Anglico. Oh, you're just a grunt. And blah. So when the PT came, it's like, okay, we were trying to make each other pass out. So you guys were like, going, oh my god, why are they killing us like this?
Well, Whitfield got on me because I was at the tail end of it. I'm at the lead in the beginning.
Yeah.
My legs cramped up because I was more of a sprinter than any kind of distance runner, and I'm 10 years older than all the other guys in there. And as we're running back to camp, all these guys would sort of get up to where I am, and then I'd like, go, yeah, just pass me, go. And I was the last one with some other guy that was puking, and Whitfield just gave me the old look. You're the company commander. You got to lead, be at the front. And I'm just, gasping for air, going, yes, guy.
Always remember, you can't pull a chain. You can't push a chain. You have to pull a chain. So that's why the leader, the man, has to be in the front, and it's up to your senior NCOs to clean up the back end of it. So,
I should have been in a Jeep then.
No.
No, you did a fine job portraying.
Yep, you're right where
Marine
you were supposed to be. We knew we were going to hurt people that day. That's why we went like 2 miles, and then we did all the sit-ups and the push-ups, and then we kind of sprinted coming back. Hey,
you guys, okay. The cadre, the other boot camp, you must have had your own facilities for bathroom, right?
No. I did 4 boot camps, and all of them were in the field, just like you did. I did 4 boot camps on that show. So
you shared the same porta pod as all the everyone else in there?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh no, I always had gunny porta john. You guys,
yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys know. I get my own porta john. The rest of you guys shit in your own shit. I don't share my shitter. That's for sure. And Captain Dye knew that as well, because I'll dig a hole right in the middle of his tent and shit there before I shit wherever the other people do.
Hey man, nothing's like being over in Iraq where it's 130 degrees in the porta potty and you've got 30 flies flying around, and you take a magazine with you, not to read, but to freaking kill flies.
To keep the flies off you.
Yeah, kill flies. If I had one of those salt guns, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
If I got a buddy overseas, I'm going to send him a salt gun. You load it up with salt. No, it's a salt gun.
I've seen them. I don't have one, but I've seen them.
Oh, it's highly recommend, because the flies land on your leg. You just take that salt gun, put it right up next to them, shoots a burst of salt and shreds their wings.
Oh, nice.
Oh, you got to get one. Go on Amazon, salt gun, $35. Most fun you've ever had killing flies. It is amazing. Anyway. Well, guys, it's been an hour and 45 minutes, and I've had Henry and Scott probably are dying to hit the head. But I want to say thanks again, Henry and Scott.
Yeah.
Thanks to you.
Thanks for having me. I mean, seriously, man, I enjoy doing this, and I appreciate the interest.
Oh, you kidding? We're going to have another one. We'll do a few months. We'll get a website built for you. We'll have another one. You're going to have your own podcast. I can see it.
I don't know about that. I'm enjoying the one I'm doing with Don and Jeff.
Yeah. So tell everybody about that real quick.
Yeah, what's the Scuttlebutt podcast with Don Abernathy and Jeff Copsetta? I was a guest on there twice after the first We Happy Few 506 episode, and they asked me to just come on and be a regular co-host because we all kind of had the same interest. We'd start talking about books and stuff like that. So I was like, yeah, I enjoy talking to you guys.
Well, I can see why, man. You do a great job, and of course, Freddie, Joe, and Scott. I love the banter between you two, man.
And we're gonna have our own podcast.
Yeah.
The Freddie Scott
We're
show.
We're gonna call it Freaking the Commie.
That's a great name.
Take off to the Great White North, eh?
Take off, eh?
Yeah,
Hey, it's nice
man.
meeting you, Henry.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Freddie, Joe.
Yes, sir. Pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to bring you guys down, and if you hang out for a minute, we'll talk in 1 second. But once again, I can't thank you guys enough for joining me tonight. It's been a great night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else you want to say before I bring you down real quick? You guys just hang out for a second. Here we go.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for joining Tall Tales with Taco. This was just a fantastic night where you tell tall tales and hang out with guys like Henry Sledge. I highly encourage you, please order this as a Christmas gift. If you have somebody on your hard to buy list, buy this book. Order it now. I don't think you're going to have a supply chain problem because I just looked it up on Amazon. They're out there. Order this book. Give it to your special person who may be interested in Pacific Theater, and that's going to open their eyes. It's incredible. Until next week, Jacqueline Basilone Smith is going to be with us, I believe, with her dad. We're going to have her cousin, who is a Staff Sergeant Basilone out in California, and we're going to talk about the Basilones Medal of Honor recipients in the Pacific. And when he died, Guadalcanal, and then when he died on Iwo Jima. A horrible day. And that is why we try not to let any Medal of Honor recipients go back to the theater because of John Basilone, I believe. I know that there have been exceptions, and people can tell me that. Barney Barnum's one of them, Colonel Barnum, but very few, I'll tell you that. Anyway, until next week, you guys have a great night. Enjoy your holiday here coming up, and eat more tacos. Adios, hasta luego, avidesen, chus, sheshene, au revoir, domo arigato gozaimasu, tano shinde, kudasai, ciao, arrivederci. And you guys can tell me in the comments which brand you want for the end of the show. Is it going to be this one? Or I didn't. Yeah, that one. Anyway, have a great night, guys. Adios.